So clearly, when I used to go to my mechanic shop and throw my 1990 Jeep on the lift, change the oil filter, put 6 quarts of oil in, dispose of the old oil, put the lift down, drive out of the shop. That was the extent of, let's call it, development that you had to do for a vehicle. Now, I remember, 10 years ago when inspections, per state law were being done, the car would go on some sort of rotating wheelbase, and you'd have to look at a monitor and follow the path as you sped up and slowed down. And one of the things that kept popping into my mind is this is not going to clearly stay in this old infrastructure, right? Cars are getting smarter. Just implementing and being able to integrate your mobile phone into a car is going to create a whole software opportunity for mechanics, right? And so now the inspection service, which is to make sure you're compliant with emissions, et cetera, is just plug and play, no more driving, et cetera. So the development from a mechanical point of view has changed dramatically from the old way of just changing a filter. The software. How is the software development changing in terms of the autonomous landscape and the automobile landscape in general?
I believe that software is the main driver of this whole change. You cannot do so much with internal combustion engines. And even if you switch to electrical engine, that would mean only so much for the user experience. But the software changes it all. And I believe that realization happened to OEMs, car manufacturers, just several years ago. They realized that people are not now buying wheels and suspension and engines. They want to buy user experience not only with driving, but also with entertaining themselves in the car and getting the car into the digital lifestyle, into the infrastructure. And that changed the way they thought, because previously software for them was just like a part. So you order telematics box from a tier 1, and there is some software coming with it. You don't really care much about that, just works somewhere inside. Suddenly it all changed. Software from being a part supplied to a car became a general force into selling this car. Just look at how Daimler presented their new MBUX experience at the latest CES show. It was not about suspensions, it was not about engines, right? It was about user experience in the car. And that is all driven by the software.
Well, it's interesting. So, to your point, we used to measure, is that a V8 or a V6 or a 5.3 liter, all-wheel versus four-wheel, et cetera. And it doesn't even seem like that's part of the conversation anymore. It's like if you get stuck in the mud, one tire spins, the other one does nothing, is really kind of irrelevant in today's world. As long as the driver has a good user experience while they're stuck in the mud, that's actually more important.
Right. That's how people make decisions.
Yeah.
And definitely industry goes the way people make decisions.
So to move this back to the mobility revolution, it's critical for us to be pushing the user experience aspect in addition to a lot more within the development part of the software.
Exactly. And since we're talking about user experience, and user experience is different from car to car, and at the same time people get used to certain things in the software and they would like to keep using them. That's why usually you buy your next car the same brand as your previous one. That also influences the whole mobility aspect. So you would be much more comfortable if your shared car you're driving is always a BMW, because you would be quite comfortable in this interface.
So that's an interesting point in terms of user experience. So my uncle has been a legend Ford car user the last 50 years at least, lease, upgrade, etc. But for most baby boomers, for them to learn how to use GPS on their phone was a task in and of itself. And now you're implementing that, whether it be integration or natural part of the new headboard or something. How are we seeing the adoption of this technology, particularly in the older generation, that is used to the conversations about power windows versus leather seats?
That's a good question, because I think here we have generational problem, because with the new generation, the closer you get to mobile experience to smartphone experience, the better, because that's what they're using probably 99% of their spare time, and that's what they want to continue using in the car. As for baby boomers or people who are not much into that, they would still like to get some touch and feel. So instead of pushing the screen, they would prefer a button. And instead of making a gesture or trying to communicate with the car by voice, they would prefer a jog dial, right? So I think that that is still yet to be figured out by the industry. And that's why in the modern car, implementation of an interface becomes quite a tricky thing, because in some cases we get like 4 different inputs for the same interface. So we should allow user to do it by voice. We should support touchscreen. We should support jog dial, and we also should support buttons, so that whoever is using the car finds a way to communicate with that.